99% of the time, if you choose to be a founder, you are an idiot and you are doing the wrong thing. And it's like, like Elon says, it's chewing glass and staring into the abyss. My first business was selling stickers to kids in kindergarten. By second grade, I was doing a trading card business in school. Eventually, the principal at the time shut it down. She was like, you can't run a business at second grade. So, that was the end of that startup.
You had the first regulatory issue
Yes.
at a very young age.
Then a car gang out of Southern California figures out this is a new startup with nice cars. Let's go rob them. And they hit up the network and they steal $500,000 worth of cars in an afternoon. Startups don't die when they run out of money. They die when founders run out of optimism. The best investors back people, not ideas. The capital is a constraint, but I think good companies will always manage to find capital.
Hey Ali, thank you so much for joining us and thank you so much for taking the time. I've been following your journey for a very long time. Especially, I think we were introduced through Jehara back in the day. But even before, I think I started following you a lot more when I saw you launch Stonks, which I thought was one of the most interesting ways of investing as well. But I know you've built and sold a company before that as well, and you've built and pivoted many times, which is what your new book is all about. I think essentially it's about perseverance, but we'll let you explain that a bit more. So I think the best way to start is with your journey. I know you were born and raised in Karachi. So let's start from there.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. The quick 2-minute version is I was born in Karachi. My first business was selling stickers to kids in kindergarten. And then by first grade, I figured out I could draw things and cut them out and make them prettier and charge more lunch money. So it was like, get 1 rupee, sell them to kids. By second grade, I was doing a trading card business in school. So you remember, Pokemon cards, those sorts of things. At the time, in the 80s, as 80s kid, I'm dating myself, but Transformers was really big, right?
I know. I'm also an 80s kid, so yeah.
Okay, great. And so they had these little sticker collections. You'd collect them. And so I would trade with kids at school in second grade.
Where in Karachi was this?
This was at FPS, Foundation.
Oh, nice. I'm also from FPS, but I was born and raised in Hyderabad. So I was in Hyderabad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no way. FPS kid.
Yeah, FPS
that's
kid,
awesome. Yeah, it was Yasmin Minhas, Raza,
of course,
and Afsha Khalid, Sabiha Mohammed, all of those folks.
What year is this to date
This
you
is,
perfectly?
Yes, perfectly. Date me, add more white hair, but 2000. I graduated
nice.
Class of 2000. And the principal at the time, I think it was Miss Sabiha, I forget who exactly was the vice principal or principal. Anyway, so I figured out, okay, trading is cool, but I should just, sometimes you get bad cards, you lose money, so I should just buy it wholesale, sell it retail, because that's what all the shops are doing.
Yeah.
So I got my mom to take me to wherever the shops were buying their cards. So I'd buy these giant packs, bring them to school, and then sell by the box.
Okay.
And that worked way better. Eventually, the principal at the time shut it down. She was like, you can't run a business at second grade. So, that was the end of that startup.
Yeah. You had the first regulatory issue at a very young age.
First regulatory
crackdown, actually. Yeah.
Fast forward many years, my brother and I, we've done other startups together, more or less. And so we were making websites for businesses in the 90s.
So before we fast forward many years, I don't want to do that. I want to go through those many years. So after school in FPS, where did you go to college?
So I went to Williams in the US. It's a small liberal arts school.
So you applied from Pakistan, Karachi, and you just come to the US for college. Okay.
Yes, I applied from there, got a scholarship, and ended up at Williams because they gave me the most money, and the other colleges didn't, and it was great.
And what did you want to be at that point?
I didn't know.
Okay.
I didn't know. I kind of liked this internet stuff. I liked reading biographies of, people, sort of world leaders, business leaders. And I was just trying to figure it out, but I loved tinkering. So I did a couple of other small businesses during college, including one where, the more respectable ones would be building an auction website where kids were kind of doing a local version of eBay. So my roommate, proud moment was he got a computer for $1 from a professor who wanted to get rid of it. So he was like, Ali, this is the best thing ever. I love this website. But other less respectable businesses were bringing DVDs from Pakistan and selling them to kids at college because the arbitrage was insane. I mean, DVDs were like 10 cents, 5 cents, back in Pakistan. And then here people were, for some reason, paying $30 a DVD.
Yeah, I know the reason. They were pirated in Pakistan.
Yeah. And then you have to be careful at customs though. So like I couldn't bring the boxes because then they would figure out I'm selling them, right? Yeah. So they would all just look like audio CDs.
Right. For your Discman or whatever, Walkman at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what happens? Like right after college, did you get a job? Did you start with a business?
No. So my brother ended up at the same college, and we both started tinkering on a business. We were like, look, if we graduate and get a job, it's over. Then you just get sucked in. I did. So it was my junior year and his freshman year, and we were tinkering on a bunch of ideas. I had another friend from college who joined us as a co-founder and my CTO, Prosper. And, Facebook was like really big and hot back then, just like AI is now. I will say AI 53 times. And so we were like, let's do the social network thing. And Facebook was like less than 1 million users at the time. So we're like, okay, can we do something?
Approximately what year is this?
This is like 05, 04, 05, like really, really early. And so we built several versions of it, and one of them got popular. It had photos, sharing, and like Facebook at the time didn't have photos. A VC called us up and they were like, we'll put in 300 grand and some angels from the college, Mark Gold, shout out. He was our first angel investor, wrote us a $12,000 check. They put in some money and they were like, the VC was like, Headline Ventures now. They're like, you got to move to San Francisco. And I was like, what's in San Francisco? And so I dropped out, moved here, and that became the first startup.
Okay, yeah. And then what happened?
Facebook eventually crushed all the other social networks with network effects kicked in. Some were through errors of sort of commission or mission, MySpace, Friendster, Orkut, Bebo, High Five. They all, for one reason or the other, sort of got crushed by Facebook. We were one of them. It was a site called XuQa. It was the number one social network in Turkey. I don't know why. We traveled there many times, tried to figure out exactly how it happened and tried to reverse engineer it. We were bigger than Facebook in 3 cities in the US for about a year and a half.
Okay.
But eventually, network effects kicked in, and then we had to pivot. So pivoted the business to. I don't want to give away like all the stories in the book, but there was this funny one where, we were like, what do we do? It's like 2 weeks of cash left. We had other investors at the time as well, and they had told us like, look, just get millions of users, and then we're going to fund your next round. We were running out of money, and so we got millions of users. We went back to them and they were like, well, it's obvious now that Facebook is going to win, so good job getting millions of users, but we're not going to fund your next round. So we had like, I think 2, maybe 4 weeks of cash left, and we had to figure out, okay, we have some usage. How do we turn this into revenue to keep the lights on? And at the time, most of the team was based out of Pakistan. And I just, we added, like, games were starting to get popular. We were seeing these things happening at Habbo Hotel and like these Cyworld, these like Asian sites and Asian networks where people were using like virtual currencies to monetize some of these communities. And it was optional. There were like games you could play. And sort of the free-to-play model. This is circa sort of 2006, 2007. And so, we put up these points on the site called Peanuts, and we just limited them. And there was no way to, like, pay for them, but we were just like, let's see what happens. And we gated some features behind these Peanuts. And, I go home on a Friday and I come back on Monday and all the engineers in the office are giggling and like something is clearly going on, right? So like I asked Prosper, who's our CTO, like, Jude, what's happening? And he's like, hey, Jude, girls on the site are contacting me. And they were contacting all the engineers because they had figured out who the engineers were because they all had profiles on the site and they're offering us, not safe for work photos in exchange for peanuts.
Wow. Okay.
And these were like users on the platform that had just like figured out who really runs things and who can get them free peanuts. And it was hilarious, right? It was like, if users are willing to do things like that, basically send nudes for peanuts.
Yeah.
There's some value here. Like, we should be able to monetize this, right? So we put up a credit card form, and then we put up surveys and ads that you could take or watch to earn peanuts, right? Trade time for money or money for, peanuts. And that started to work. And we paid the bills and we bought ourselves some more runway.
And then what happens?
Then we realized, okay, great, this like monetization thing is kind of working. This is interesting. But like, our audience has stopped growing. It's shrinking because Facebook, network effects. And, I remember like Zuck was on, he had a profile on our site, and he would log in like every couple of times a week to kind of see what features. And he was doing this with all the social networks, and like whatever worked, they would copy, right? So like the newsfeed came from Twitter, photos came from us plus a couple of other sites. There was like a virtual gifting feature we had that they copied pixel by pixel for a while. And it was up on Facebook for a couple of years, where you could send people like virtual items on their birthday, for example, for like $1. So, I mean, they basically copied sort of a lot of the best features that everybody else had. And so our audience is declining. We're like, but this model works. Could we just take this monetization method of trading time for money by taking surveys, right? So, and let other large communities that have millions of users or hundreds of millions of users monetize their free users, right? So we tried that. It took a while to kind of land a captive, sort of the right niche audience for that, but that worked, and that turned into the startup. So it went from XuQa to Peanut Labs, and that was the first startup that exited. So it became a B2B startup, not huge, but we grew to about 60 people, raised $4.5 million, and then eventually sold the company in 2010 to eRewards Dynata, which was one of our partners.
How much did you sell the company for, if you don't mind sharing?
30 mil.
Okay, nice. And then what happens now that you've sold the company, you're an exited founder? What do you think? What are you thinking now? You and your brother were both co-founders, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now what are you guys thinking? Do you guys go on a trip first, take some time off?
We did this. I think the whole team, or a bunch of people on the team, we did. We ran the Grand Canyon together in Arizona. So we went from rim to rim in a day. Wow. So it's about 25 miles, 10,000 feet of elevation change, lots of like ups and downs. And at some point we got lost, ran out of water, and, fun stories, but it was great.
Okay. And then the next company is Streamlabs?
The next company is Streamlabs. It started off as something else. So, I sold our first company, and we were like, okay, we've cracked the code. We could totally do this. Like, we're just going to make this happen. And, the first company took about 6 years, start to finish, from like funding to sale. And we were like, we're going to do the next one in like 3 years, because we have figured this out, right? We've raised we've pivoted. We've kind of figured out how to get to product market fit, but Streamlabs ended up taking 9 years.
Okay.
And for the first 4.5 years, we were going nowhere.
And so tell me about that. What did it start off as, and what made you pivot into what? It
started off as a luxury peer-to-peer car sharing startup. And I think as guys, we all go through like some car phase at some point in our lives. I was going through a big car phase, and, a lot of my friends were, and, it was kind of like Get Around or Turo, if you're familiar with Turo, but for luxury cars. So starting with sort of, Mercedes, BMW, sort of Audis, all the way up to, Ferraris and Rolls Royce, And so we found a really interesting growth hack, and we managed to get 400 of these cars, like including Bentleys, Lambos, in the Bay Area, listed on the platform. and got it up and running in a few months to about $1 million in revenue. So
Oh, wow. Okay. And then what happens?
then a car gang out of Southern California figures out, okay, this is a new startup with nice cars. Let's go rob them. And they hit up the network and they steal, $500,000 worth of cars in an afternoon.
In one afternoon.
In one afternoon, my brother Murthy actually met the guy who stole his car, because this is sort of a peer-to-peer model. Like, you would meet somebody, show them around the car, give them the keys. It was insured, and then the person would rent it for a couple of days and come back. And so most of the people renting were like, renting for special occasions. They're going to Napa, or it's a wedding, or like they just want to try out like a cool car before they buy it. But these thieves had other plans, so they stole a bunch of cars in like a 2-hour window. And I think we were just like, oh my God, this business sucks. And it's a matter of time before something even more awful happens. And like the margins weren't great. The unit economics kind of sucked. And the math, when we put those two things together, we were like, we need to pivot and get out. And a lot of that has borne out. So if you look at the industry, you look at Zipcar, you look at GetAround. GetAround raised, I think like north of 500 million from like SoftBank and others. They actually went public, and now the stock is like a penny stock.
Yeah.
Because in the long run, like the math does catch up to you, right? It's what Buffett says is like the short run, the market is a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. So you really have to build something meaningful in the long run.
Yeah.
These conversations are brought to you by KissBazaar. KissBazaar is one of the leading BNPL platforms in Pakistan. KissBazaar essentially आपको provide करता है different products on easy installments, whether you are a small business or whether you're an individual. अगर आपको अपने घर के लिए AC चाहिए, अपने घर के लिए फ्रिज चाहिए, अपने business के लिए बाइक्स चाहिए, अपने employees के लिए लैपटॉप्स चाहिए, phones चाहिए, ऑफिस के लिए सोलर चाहिए, घर के लिए सोलर चाहिए, KissBazaar has a solution for you. Go on to kissbazaar.pk and find the right solution for yourself.
Where to work.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was the next pivot? So say you have this huge comfort with pivots, right? And this is what you probably also this is what you've also not probably definitely covered in your book as well. So what's going in your mind, and how did you develop this comfort?
I don't know. Maybe it looks like comfort when you compare it to other people, but for me, and it was just like, well, that's the obvious thing to do, right? If something is not working, why would you spend another year banging your head on a wall? Now, obviously, are you really sure? When are you really sure, right?
That's the thing.
It's sort of art more than science. But, once you kind of really feel like something is not working, there's no point to continuing just because.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people just, in your opinion, just keep going because they feel like, why do you think people just don't do it? More people don't do pivots.
It's very, very hard to pivot.
It's very hard to pivot.
It's very hard to pivot. So most people who do startups give up the moment the first idea doesn't work. Right? They okay, I started this company, I raised money for it, I've sold it to my customers, my employees, and sometimes they're coming from a slower paced, larger company where they've done the same thing for many years, right? So if something doesn't work, it's harder to, most people just never change. They shut the company down. They would rather shut the company down than pivot and try something else. But what makes pivoting really, really hard is not the realization that something is not working. It is, what do you do after? Right? So as a founder, you've sold yourself on you have, even though things are hard, but you said, okay, I really like this idea. I love it. I'm going to do this. Then you've sold your investors, you've sold your team, and they're all sort of moving in that direction. It's very hard to go and tell them look, it's not working. We're going to have to let some of you go. To investors look, we raised money for this thing. That didn't work. Can we try this instead? Sometimes they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no. had investors who were not happy pivoting. They were like, we don't like this. Why are you doing this? That's not what we invested in.
Yeah. So what do you do then?
So the best investors generally back the people, not the ideas.
Yeah.
At the early stage. I think it's different for like late stage investing, but for early stage, the best investors back people, not ideas. And they've generally been supportive throughout, right? So all of the folks I've worked with generally have been very supportive of pivots. But folks who are like newer to angel investing will be, for example, they'll put in a small check and they'll be like, well, this is not what I invested in. Give me my money back. And then, so like to avoid all those situations, I think people will often go on much longer than they should.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So it's hard emotionally.
It's hard emotionally because you have to go have those tough conversations as well. And a lot of people might as well just let it die its natural death.
Yeah.
As opposed to go and have those difficult, uncomfortable conversations, even with yourself, I guess. So once this luxury car rental does not work, what do you do next?
We tried a whole bunch of things. I think we went through something like 25 pivots.
Okay.
I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but some highlights were like we built a viral LinkedIn app on the LinkedIn platform it was called Survey Report. And it actually got up to like $1 million in revenue, and then LinkedIn decided to like shut the platform or severely limit developer access, partly because that app was doing so well. We looked at acquiring businesses. We looked at some point, I put together an esports team just because I was a nerd and I liked video games. And so bumbled our way into putting together an esports team for League of Legends.
Okay.
And so like a whole bunch of things. And then eventually, I think, after 20-something pivots, we were just like out of steam and tired and exhausted. And we were like, okay, this is it. This is the last one. If this doesn't work, pack it up, go home.
Okay.
And so we had raised 1.3 million and we had managed to make it last 4 years.
Okay.
Between like 3 people. We'd had other people come and go. And I think we were down to like the last couple of $100,000. And we were like, okay, we like esports, we like video games. At the time, DraftKings FanDuel was working. So we just copied that product for esports for a different market because they were doing it for, daily fantasy and for football or American football and basketball, etc. And we did that for esports. That resonated. It got a lot of traction. We got to revenue very quickly. And we ended up going and raising like a Series A with XuQa like 2 months later.
What was this company called? Streamlabs?
So it wasn't Streamlabs yet.
Okay, fine.
We raised 12 million. Actually ended up being about 16 a few months later. And then suddenly DraftKings and FanDuel were doing dumb things by letting their employees trade on each other's websites with inside information.
Okay.
Right? So regulatory bodies basically banned the whole thing.
Okay.
And payment networks stopped processing transactions. Everything went to zero. So like our revenue.
Banned the activity as opposed to those two specific players?
Yes, they banned it for everyone. And they told MasterCard and Visa and PayPal, you cannot work with any daily fantasy sites.
Oh, okay.
At all. And so our revenue went from, again, a couple of $1 million to zero. But this time it happened even faster. It was overnight.
Okay.
They're like, you get an email, we're shutting you down. The banks are shutting you down. And so we were like, okay, well, at the time we had just raised this Series A with XuQa. We had, 12 mil or 12 to 16 or something in the bank, a lot of money, no business. What do you do? And so, we just kind of looked at it from first principles as like, what do we have? We have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Business has gone to zero. We can either sit around for a few years, wait for the regulators to sort it out. We would have to get licenses state by state, wait 4 or 5 years. It did end up taking like 4 or 5 years for the space to play out. Or we could try something else, right? So like we have money. We like this space. This space is growing. Like the Twitch world. Twitch, it was the early days of Twitch and live streaming video. This is like 2014, 2015. We were like, well, why don't we go buy some companies or tools? And rather than try to solve for product market fit, why don't we acquire, some tools that have solved that, and see if that works, right? And I think huge credit to, our partner, Umar Hamoy from Sequoia at the time, was he was also like a weird first principles thinker, and he was very risk on.
Yeah.
So most VCs, I've looked at buying companies, at other times with other partners, but generally people are like, that's not what you do with VC money. Okay. Yeah. You need to go try a bunch of shit, see what works, throw spaghetti on the wall. But Umar was like, the idea makes sense. You didn't raise money to sit on it. Go for it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So huge credit to him, because I think without that encouragement and that thumbs up or green flag, we wouldn't have done it. And we've tried to do that since later, but it had, we haven't been able to. But at that time, we went out and, acquired this tool called Twitch Alerts in the streaming space. That was early but growing organically, and that turned into sort of the basis for Streamlabs. So then that thing was growing. It was a tipping tool for streamers, and we ended up building more tools around it for the same customer. So we ended up either acquiring or building a streaming software, a mobile app, chatbots, merch store, website builder, sort of like an all-in-one creator suite for live streamers on Twitch. And, that over that 9-year journey of Streamlabs, it was the first 4.5 years of darkness, wandering in the desert, going nowhere. And then it was the next 4.5 years. We went from zero to sort of tens of millions in revenue, about 200 million a year in payments volume.
Wow.
In just tipping. You think nobody tips these people, but they do. And then, used by about 70% of Twitch streamers and, a significant portion of YouTube live streamers as well.
Wow. And then who acquired this company?
So that was eventually acquired by Logitech for 170 million. Some of it upfront, some of it over time, but that's what the deal total ended up being.
Yeah, but why Logitech? Why not Twitch itself? I would imagine Twitch should buy it.
Yes. So Twitch, there are two groups of buyers. One was Twitch and the people who competed with Twitch or trying to compete with Twitch, which was at the time YouTube and Facebook.
Okay.
With Facebook creators and live at the time was a big focus for them. And then Mixer was another streaming site owned by Microsoft, which has since been shut down, but they were investing heavily in it at the time. So that was one group. And the other group were sort of people who sold things to gamers. And that a lot of it was people who sell gaming PCs and mice and special keyboards and chairs and peripherals and accessories. And that was actually a much bigger business than I didn't know that was a big business. Logitech's a public company and they have other lines of business, but gaming was an important one for them. And I think strategically they felt like, they needed to be closer to influencers within that target market, which is streamers. So anyway, so both groups kind of looked at the deal, and Logitech ended up that group number 2 ended up we got a couple of term sheets, and then we ended up getting a deal done with group 2.
Excellent. And so this is the last company you built before the current one, Stonks and Pilot GPT, right?
Yeah.
What do you do in the middle? This is your second exit. Now you must be feeling man, I really know how to do this. Yeah. I really have figured this out, by the way.
Yeah. I felt to say that okay, now I've really finished. We can't mess up this badly again, right?
Yeah.
I took a few months off and I was okay, I'm going to do bunch of I mostly ended up just wasting my time, not really achieving much of anything. And my wife eventually was you're just wasting your days, you should just go back to work. There's only so much YouTube and Netflix you can watch, or video games you can play. And,
also, family's not used to having you around for this long.
yeah, exactly. I think it's good if we're not just moping around the house all day. So my wife was get out, go back to work,
go do something. Yeah,
which ended up being good advice. So we raised some money and started the third startup, which became Stonks.
These conversations are brought to you by KissBazaar. KissBazaar is one of the leading BNPL platforms in Pakistan. KissBazaar essentially आपको provide करता है different products on easy installments, whether you are a small business or whether you're an individual. अगर आपको अपने घर के लिए AC चाहिए, अपने घर के लिए फ्रिज चाहिए, अपने business के लिए बाइक्स चाहिए, अपने employees के लिए लैपटॉप्स चाहिए, phones चाहिए, office के लिए solar चाहिए, घर के लिए solar चाहिए, KissBazaar has a solution for you. Go on to kissbazaar.pk and find the right solution for yourself.
Okay. And yeah, so talk to me a bit more about the book. How did the book come about? I know you're like, we'll come back to Stonks and Pilot GPT, which is something very different from what Stonks is again. But talk to me about like the book, because most people just talk about, they sell success, right? Okay, this is how you build. But you are talking about a very, I don't think I've read any book on pivots or like have seen a book like, centered around pivots. So talk to me about how this came about.
Yeah, I think most of the startup advice out there focuses on the wins because it's glamorous.
Yeah.
And it gets, people want to like focus on the good, and it makes them feel important. And it sounds like that's what startups are. Like if you do a startup, you have money, you have glamour, you're going to win, you're going to go places, you'll do something, you'll make a dent in the universe. But that is not, the reason I wrote the book is that is not the actual startup experience 99% of the time. 99% of the time, if you choose to be a founder, you are an idiot and you are doing the wrong thing. And it's like, like Elon says, it's chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Nobody cares about you. Nobody wants to, like you have to throw an enormous amount of energy into it every day to get your team to move, to get the business to move. Things are never working. And so most of the startup journey is kind of like the first 4.5 years of Streamlabs, where we just had to survive. And that's why we wrote the book, is to kind of share the stories of struggles so that founders who read this book, is really written for founders who or people who are thinking about starting or who have started, is they know that all the shit they're going to face is par for the course. And, hopefully they'll see all the dumb things we did and all the things that didn't work. And they'll be like, oh, that's normal. I should just keep going. Yeah. I shouldn't give up. Yeah.
And you think that's what separates the successful founders from the rest? Like the fact that they kept going? Or should some people just actually stop?
I think so. I mean, I think there's a bunch of things that can help founders keep going, right? Having a good co-founder. I was very fortunate to be able to work with my brother through most of this, almost all of it. Having a great co-founder, having a community of people around you that other founders, because it gets pretty lonely, especially when things are not working. Nobody wants to talk to you or be your friend. And you can't tell your spouse or your investors or your employees how terrible things are.
Yeah.
But hearing stories of struggle from founders who've done well and kind of gotten to the end of a journey is really important, because it helps people to keep going. Right? So if you and there's not enough of that out there. That's why I wrote the book.
That's true, actually.
It's like most of the advice is like, okay, how do you make the perfect hire? How do you raise blah, blah, blah? Like, how do you, market to this customer? How do you scale? How do you do hyper growth? What are sort of none of that really matters. It's until much later.
Yeah. And if you don't keep going, then that's all irrelevant then. So, but then you start with Stonks, and Stonks is this live investment platform, like Shark Tank meets, not YC, but like Twitch, right? Like you can just come and people just invest right there. Like what led to that?
It was COVID and we were all stuck at home. This is like, 2020, 21, and Clubhouse was blowing up at the time. And, I was just like messing around, and I hosted a couple of shows on Clubhouse where I had some VC friends come, and we invited founders to come pitch, and like that had hundreds of people show up, and some people actually wrote checks into the startups, right? And I was like, holy shit. And then we tried the same thing on Zoom in a more closed setting, and I remember our first, just like a casual Zoom with 3 founders pitching, 30 people watching, like a 150, 200K ended up trading hands. So I was like, wow, this is cool. This is interesting. We should build up, maybe we put this on a website and like add some buttons that do things and automate some of this and make it easier. And that's how Stonks started. Is we started basically just productizing that experience. It's like a Zoom thing, a pitch session productized, and it ended up becoming a platform for demo days. So think like YC demo day in a box, right? AngelList meets Twitch. And for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, it did really, really well while we were stuck at home during COVID. So a lot of demo days were also just all virtual. So everyone was forced to go virtual for any large gathering, right? And so tooling like this became really important. And I think in 2022, which was our peak year for Stonks, we had something like 70 different accelerators hosting events on Stonks, including Techstars, 500, pretty much everyone other than YC. We hosted 155 demo days that calendar year out of 365. So every second day there was a demo day. And a demo day is like 20 founders pitching to a few hundred investors.
Wow. Okay.
Right. And 1,500 funded startups pitched on Stonks. So like not just people with a business plan, but people who had already raised some money and were just filling out their round or something. And that year, more than $100 million changed hands on Stonks from investors to founders in one calendar year. So it was working. It was like, I didn't know how to make money on it yet, but like it was kind of working. And, but then when COVID ended, all of that behavior started to unravel, and people just went back to offline, right? They wanted to meet founders in person. Before I write you a $25,000, $50,000, $2 million check, I need to see you in the eye. I need to shake your hand. I need to spend 3 hours with you, whiteboarding or lunch or whatever. Yeah. That's what people wanted to do, but they couldn't because of COVID. And so all that behavior went online, right? But afterwards, everything went back to being offline. And so you're like, okay, it's time to pivot.
And the pivot is Pilot GPT.
No, there are like 15 pivots in the middle.
There's 15 pivots in the middle.
Pivots in the middle. But Pilot GPT, so Murthy, my brother, is a pilot. He flies regularly for fun. He's a hobbyist. Yeah. And it was his idea. And we were like, okay, let's do something in AI.
Not 53 times. So surprisingly, only the second time. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we had tried a bunch of things. And Pilot GPT was the latest one, where it was sort of an app for pilots that's uses a lot of AI to reduce their pre-flight planning workload, and then in-flight when they need access to information rapidly.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a crisis or an emergency, it helps them to manage the plane, stay ahead of the plane. That's what they call it. And keep things from spiraling out of control.
Perfect. Now, one important aspect that I want to cover with most of my guests is entrepreneurs in Pakistan, and what advice would you give to them, right? So if you are, say, someone who's just graduated college in Pakistan in 2026, how would you advise them to look at the world and maybe look at, say, entrepreneurial opportunities that are global?
I think it's never been easier to be global, even from Pakistan or anywhere in the world for that matter, especially with AI. So if you think back, the internet was a leveling field, right? It was a great leveler in a lot of ways. Like you could, if you were motivated, you could access some of the best resources that the rest of the world had from anywhere in the world. All you needed was like a computer or a phone or internet connection. You just had to be motivated, thorough, persevere. AI is sort of in a lot of ways doing that too. And opening up access, to people who want to build, who may not know how to code, people who want to design but don't know how to design. So it's opening up access in many, many ways And I think, it's also a technology reset. It's a hard reset. A lot of folks I'm dumb, way smarter than me, have called this, when they compare AI, it's Paul Graham and others compare it to like electricity. They don't compare it to the internet, right?
Yeah.
This is sort of like the steam engine or like electricity in terms of the impact I think it's going to have. So we're still very much in the first innings. And so whenever there's a technology reset, there's a huge opportunity for new people coming in, particularly young people who aren't stuck in a certain way of doing things, to come in and take advantage of that.
Okay. And in terms of like the best founders, like you've been a founder yourself, you are an investor as well right now. What do you think separates, like if I want to be a founder today, what do you think separates the good ones from, say, the ones that don't end up making it?
Through Stonks, and after I ended up putting together a bunch of venture funds and both early stage and late stage. So we invested in something like 250 early stage companies and about a dozen late stage ones, including Anthropic back in 2023, SpaceX. We got thrown out of an OpenAI deal, which is another story, but it's a bunch. And I cannot predict the winners, especially early stage. Early stage, we ended up just indexing based on good people. And that has mostly worked out. Like this whole family of funds is ended up, at sort of a 2.5 to 3x TVPI for a 2021 vintage family of funds that is top decile, according to PitchBook, Carta, and Cambridge Associates and whatnot. I think the founders generally who make it are just the ones who don't give up. And Dalton from YC is a partner at YC, and now he's run Standard Capital, as like this quote that is I really, really like, which is he says, startups don't die when they run out of money. They die when founders run out of optimism. So hopium is more important than capital.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of the things that you can do, anything and everything you can do to keep going. I think the analogy is like you're a marathoner on mile 22. And that's what most of the startup journey is going to feel like. And you're just like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Or maybe mile 7 and you've got like mile 25 or whatever, the folks who made it just kept going. Whether it was through because they needed to, they were desperate, they didn't have any other options, or they were just irrationally, completely in love with the problem. Whatever the deep need was, there was an emotional reason, a deep need to keep going.
In Pakistan, I think one of the biggest problems has been capital. There's been a severe lack of capital, especially for building companies and all. Have you interacted with Pakistani founders? Like, what has been your opinion? I know interactions might be limited, but still, what has been your opinion around that market?
I think Pakistani founders are, in general, amazing. They are tough because they've had to survive and start in a very difficult environment compared to, Silicon Valley. Like, I think it's a much harder environment. You have to deal with like, okay, there's no electricity. There's like a law and order situation going wrong. There's like, our bank account, like customers aren't paying us, or like, employees stole something, or there's all these situations that are far less common here. And so they tend to be good. They tend to be pretty tough, operationally savvy. But I think it's a challenging market, right? For various reasons. I think it's a very young ecosystem. It's getting there. But access to capital obviously is hard because a lot of investors are like, well, I can do emerging markets and kind of pray and hope for the best, or I could just do AI here.
Yeah.
And so the easy wins are here. But having said that, there's lots of great communities. I think there's and there's more VCs and investors now than there were 5 years ago, right? You've been involved in the space for a long time. You've been tracking it from supporting startups and investors. So I think it's growing and it's headed in the right direction.
In terms of like fundraising advice, what advice would you give to like, say, founders from that part of the world? who want to say raise from some of the big names over here, or like just raise from say raise venture capital in Silicon Valley?
So I think founders who have done, Pakistani founders for the Pakistani ecosystem who have done really well are more important than the capital. So what do I mean by that? I think seeing examples of success from people who grew up where you grew up and did really well, and figuring out the route they took and what they did to get there. So, recently, like a really great community that has grown since COVID is this community called Pak Launch, and they do these events in Pakistan, right? Ali, Fahad, and they just did an event in Islamabad, and they had a bunch of great speakers from here, right? Yeah. So, Ahmed from US Mobile, right? Ahmed Khardak, and Usman, the founder of Chegg, who built Chegg and took it public.
Yeah.
And recently Rehan Jalil from Security AI sold it for a few $1 billion. I think putting people who are unicorn founders in front of the broader ecosystem is incredibly powerful, because they show that it can be done. And there's also great entrepreneurs locally, right, that are doing really, really well. And you probably know this much, much better than I do, but Bazaar and others that are building great businesses locally. The capital is a constraint, but I think good companies will always manage to find capital. It won't be easy. It forces people to adapt and kind of build in resource constraint ways, but good companies always end up finding capital.
Okay. I know we are also like short on time, but so last question, piece of advice, besides not giving up, what would you, what advice would you give to someone who wants to or is starting a business right now in Pakistan?
A startup business, or thinking about a technology business. Look, there's a huge technology reset with AI, and I think that creates sort of a huge disconnect and a giant opportunity. People are learning to code on their own. People are spinning up like little products and selling things on Replit and others. Go for it. I mean, be as ambitious as you can. Be global. Don't just think for the local market. At the very least, think regional. Yeah. Think Kareem, right? That's a great shining example. Like at the very least, think regional, if not global, because the playing field has never been more level. Like, of course, it's not equal, but like it's never been closer. And there are founders, in Pakistan, like Imagine Art is another company that was built bootstrapped, no outside money, or very little, almost no outside money, and doing phenomenally well, and now sort of looking to do a larger round here. So it can be done. There are lots of great examples out there. You just have to do the right thing.
So your biggest main advice would be to think globally, and
think globally, don't give up, keep experimenting, stay lean, and like know that failure is par for the course. Like you're gonna run out of money. You'll have to deal with layoffs. You'll feel like throwing up. You will wake up in the middle of the night. You'll probably lose a marriage or two, or a good,
or two
significant other. Like all of that is par for the course, and just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll actually ask one more question, which will be our last question, which will be around like failure. Like growing up in Pakistan, like our relationship with failure is very different than what failure is considered here. Did you feel that when you came here? Or did you feel that with say having Pakistani parents and Pakistani family, or Pakistan, support system? Did you feel that change in how failure was perceived here versus how it is back home? Absolutely.
I think it's hugely different. Like my parents still don't understand what I do. And they were like, why? So I actually dropped out of college to move to California and do a startup. And they were like, okay, not only is Ali dropping out, but his brother, both are sort of, his sons are dropping out.
He's making his younger brother drop out as well.
Yeah, wow. There goes the retirement ticket, and they were like, what are you kids doing? Like, you went to a nice school, you studied hard all your life, and like, you're throwing all of that away. I had a job at JP Morgan in investment banking in New York. Like, I didn't show up for that. I moved to California to do startups. So I think, like people in Pakistan, I think at the time, it's changing now, but the perception is very different. And Silicon Valley failure is completely tolerated. It's part of creative destruction. If something doesn't work, no problem. Even if your startup doesn't work, you can shut down, take a little break, say, sorry, whatever to investors. And then many of those people will fund your next thing. So it's not about whether you failed or not. It's about how you tried, right? If you really gave it your all, you were honest, you were fair, you worked hard, you were ethical, you communicated clearly, then people are very risk tolerant. And, the venture model in a lot of ways expects you to fail.
Yeah.
Right? Like built in, like out of 100 bets, like 90 are just not going to pay. And then 7 are going to kind of, let me rephrase that. Maybe out of 100, 85 are going to fail. 10 are going to either return capital or do like a 2x, 4x type of thing. And then a couple are just going to drive all of the returns, right? So they're very encouraging of failure as long as you're ambitious, you're trying hard things, and you're really grinding hard. I think it's a very risk-on model. And people are so kind. They don't ask anything in return compared to any other ecosystem in any other industry I've seen around the world. So like New York, for example, right? Center of finance. If you want somebody to help you make an intro, be an advisor, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but chances are they'll turn around and ask for advisory shares or like some equity or like something where like, scratch my batch, I'll scratch yours. And most of the world is like that. Silicon Valley is very egalitarian in that sense. And, when I first moved to San Francisco, I didn't know anyone. And I don't know how I got connected to like the founder of Eventbrite, who was like an early guy at PayPal, Kevin Hartz. He just took us out for tacos just because to welcome us to the city. And like we were new and we don't know anybody. And you're like, welcome to the Valley, and people just like pay it forward. They don't ask for anything in return. And that karma just goes around. So like now I go and try and do that for new founders.
Someone did that for you.
Someone did that for me.
And that's what like ecosystems need to like say become thriving and be able to churn out new and more successful founders, right? Yeah,
I don't think everything should be or can be transactional.
That's true. Like I would feel like people like Jahan and Jawad Fareed in the Pakistani ecosystem did that for me, and there was no expectation in return. They just like, you want to be a lawyer in this space, let us help you. Let us help you connect with more founders and let us help you. And all we ask is just pay it forward, right? And
totally.
Yeah, and that always works. But Ali, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for sharing this book as well. And I hope more and more people read it. We'll add a link in this episode as well. So Ali, if any of the Pakistani founders want to reach out to you for advice or just generally, what's the best way to reach out to you?
LinkedIn, Twitter, just search for Ali Moiz and I'll show up.
And your DMs are open?
Or you can just comment on like something I've done, and I'll follow you and you can DM me.
Okay, fine. Perfect. All right. So we'll put those links in the description as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a good chat.